The Thanksgiving turkey sat untouched in the center of the table. My mother's famous stuffing cooled in its dish. The cranberry sauce glistened under the chandelier light. But nobody was eating anymore. My brother Derek's fork hung suspended halfway to his mouth, his story about making senior analyst at his firm dying on his lips. My mother had gone pale, her hand gripping my father's arm with enough force to leave marks. My father stared at Grandpa with an expression I'd never seen before, something between confusion and betrayal. I took another sip of Chardonnay and waited. The house on Riverside Drive, Grandpa continued cheerfully, cutting into his turkey. What a steal that was at $310,000. With your $150,000 down payment, you only had to finance $160,000. I bet you've already paid off a good chunk of that mortgage by now, haven't you, Emma? Dad, my mother said carefully, her voice tight, I think you're confused. Emma doesn't own a house. Grandpa's bushy eyebrows rose. Confused? Margaret, I may be 78 but I'm not senile. I helped Emma with that down payment myself back in 2015. Wrote the check personally. The silence stretched. My nephew, only 6 years old, sensed the tension and stopped playing with his mashed potatoes. Even he knew something had shifted in the room. Derek found his voice first. Wait, you own a house. Since when? Since June 2015, I replied evenly. A 3-bedroom colonial with original hardwood floors, updated kitchen and a backyard big enough for a garden. It's quite lovely. My father's face had progressed from pale to red. That's impossible. We would have known. You would have told us. Would I have? I met his gaze without flinching. Why would I tell a family that spent the last decade making it clear that Derek is the golden child and I'm just there? That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it? I set down my wine glass. Derek, when you bought your condo 3 years ago, how many family members helped you move? Derek shifted uncomfortably. All of them. And when I moved into my house in 2015, how many family members even knew I was moving? Silence. None, I answered for them. Because none of you asked. None of you cared enough to wonder why I suddenly stopped mentioning my apartment. Or why I couldn't make it to as many family dinners. Or why I seemed so busy on weekends. Grandpa nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. They didn't know? Margaret, you told me you were all so proud of Emma. You said the whole family helped her celebrate. My mother's face crumpled. Dad, I thought you were confused about the timeline. I thought maybe you meant Derek's condo purchase. Derek's condo? Grandpa's voice sharpened. I didn't give Derek money for his condo. I gave Emma $150,000 from my retirement savings because she came to me with a solid plan, excellent credit, and a mature approach to homeownership. Unlike some people who spent their 20s partying and calling me for bail money. Derek flushed. That was one time and I paid you back. After 3 years, Grandpa shot back. Emma paid me back in 18 months. With interest. Even though I told her it was a gift. This was news to my parents. My mother's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. You paid him back. When? Monthly installments from July 2015 to December 2016. $8,333 a month plus 2% interest. I have the bank statements if you'd like to see them. But how? My mother's confusion seemed genuine. You work at that marketing firm. You can't possibly make enough to afford a mortgage and pay Grandpa back that quickly. I make $87,000 a year, I said calmly. I received a promotion to marketing director in 2017, which brought me to $102,000. My current salary is $118,000 plus annual bonuses averaging $15,000. But you wouldn't know that because you've never asked about my career. You just know I work at that marketing firm. Derek's promotion to senior analyst, the one he'd been bragging about for the last 30 minutes, came with a salary of $95,000. I watched that realization dawn on his face. $118,000? My father repeated. That's more than I make. Yes, it is. My mother reached for her wine, her hand trembling. Emma, this doesn't make sense. If you've been doing so well, why didn't you say anything? I leaned back in my chair, studying the family I'd grown up with, the people who'd raised me, who'd somehow managed to look through me instead of at me for most of my adult life. I tried. In the beginning, I tried so hard. My voice remained steady, matter-of-fact. I called to tell you about my first promotion. You were busy planning Derek's graduation party. I mentioned I was looking at houses. Dad said, "That's nice, honey," and changed the subject to Derek's job interviews. I invited you to my housewarming party. You all had plans, Derek's birthday weekend in Vegas. Your housewarming party, my mother whispered. You had a housewarming party? In August 2015. I sent invitations 2 months in advance. Email and physical cards. Nobody responded. The truth of it hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. My nephew had started crying softly, picking up on the adult tension. Derek's wife, Sarah, excused herself to take him to the other room. Grandpa set down his fork with deliberate precision. Margaret. Robert. I'm going to say something I probably should have said years ago. You have 2 children. 2 wonderful, successful children. But you've been so busy polishing one coin that you never noticed the other was gold all along. Dad, that's not, my mother started. It is true and you know it. Grandpa's voice was firm. Derek is your son and you love him. I understand that. But Emma is your daughter, and for the last decade, you've treated her like a supporting character in Derek's story. That's harsh, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Tell me, Robert. When's Emma's birthday? My father opened his mouth, closed it, looked at my mother. It's in the spring? October 17th, Grandpa said flatly. It was 3 weeks ago. Did you call her? The silence was answer enough. Did you send a card? Text? Anything? My mother's tears started flowing. We forgot. Oh God, Emma, we forgot your birthday. You've forgotten it for the last 4 years, I said quietly. But you've never missed Derek's. In fact, last year you threw him a surprise party at that expensive restaurant downtown. Invited 40 people. Spent over $3,000. You knew about that? Derek asked. I was invited. As an afterthought. Via a Facebook event 2 days before. I couldn't make it. I had a work conference in Boston. Nobody noticed I wasn't there. My brother had the decency to look ashamed. Emma, I didn't realize. Nobody did. That's rather the point. I stood smoothing my dress. Grandpa, thank you for the help with my down payment. It really was the best investment I ever made. The house is worth $485,000 now. I've built up $325,000 in equity. Grandpa smiled, pride evident in his weathered face. That's my girl. Smart and capable. I turned to my parents. I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the house or the forgotten birthdays or the missed housewarming party. It's about 10 years of being invisible. 10 years of watching you celebrate Derek's mediocre achievements while my actual successes went unnoticed. Mediocre. Derek bristled. You made senior analyst after 8 years at your firm. That's standard trajectory. I made director after 3 years at mine. That's exceptional. But when I tried to tell you about it, Dad asked if I could help Derek update his resume. The memory of that particular phone call still stung even years later. My mother stood reaching for me. Emma, please. We didn't mean to make you feel invisible. We love you. We're proud of you. Are you? Can you name 3 things I've accomplished in the last 5 years? She faltered. You got promoted? 3 times. What else? You work hard? What else? Silence. My mother's face crumbled completely. I don't know. Oh God, I don't know. I'll tell you. I earned my MBA while working full-time. I ran a half marathon and raised $12,000 for charity. I launched a mentorship program for young women in marketing that's now operating in 6 cities. I bought a house. I paid off all my student loans. I built a life. My voice didn't rise, didn't crack. Just stated facts. And you didn't notice any of it. My father's voice was hoarse. Emma, we're sorry. We're so sorry. We didn't realize that I existed as anything other than Derek's less interesting sister? I picked up my purse. I know you didn't. That's the problem. Where are you going? My mother asked desperately. Emma, it's Thanksgiving. You can't leave. I can actually. I have friends coming over at 6. People who know me, who celebrate with me, who remember my birthday. Friends. Derek sounded genuinely surprised. You never mentioned friends. I mention them constantly. You just never listen. I pulled out my phone, showing them my Instagram feed, full of hiking trips, dinner parties, game nights, vacation photos with people they'd never met. I have a whole life you know nothing about. Grandpa stood, hugging me tightly. You're coming to my place for Christmas, right? Just the two of us like we planned. Wouldn't miss it. I'll bring the cookies. We had plans for Christmas, my mother said weakly. As a family. You have plans with Derek's family, I corrected. You always do. I'm usually an afterthought, invited out of obligation. Grandpa and I have been doing our own Christmas for 3 years now. You never noticed I stopped coming to yours. The shock on their faces would have been funny if it weren't so tragic. Derek found his voice. 3 years. Emma, why didn't you say something? I did. Every time. Sorry, I have other plans. You all assumed it was work. Nobody asked what plans or with whom, or if I'd like to be included in different arrangements. You just said "foy" and moved on. I walked toward the door, Grandpa beside me. Behind us, my mother's sobs echoed through the dining room. My father sat frozen, his untouched plate before him. Derek stared at his hands. Emma, wait, my mother called. Please. We can fix this. We can do better. Just give us a chance. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the family that had somehow forgotten I existed. Maybe. Someday. But not today. Today, I'm going home to my house that you've never seen, to have dinner with friends you've never met, to continue the life I built without you. That's not fair, Derek protested. You can't just cut us off. I'm not cutting you off. I'm just stopping the pretense that we're close. You have my address. You've had it for 10 years. You've never once asked to visit. You have my phone number. You could call anytime. You don't. I shrugged. I'm just acknowledging what's already true. I'm not important to you. And I'm finally okay with that. Grandpa and I walked out together, leaving behind the cooling turkey and the family that had never quite seen me. In Grandpa's car, I let out a long breath. That was harder than I expected. But necessary, Grandpa said, patting my hand. You can't keep breaking yourself to fit into spaces that weren't made for you. Did you plan that? The announcement at dinner. Maybe a little. He grinned sheepishly. I've watched them overlook you for too long. Figured it was time someone shined a light on what they've been missing. Thank you, Grandpa. Don't thank me yet. They're going to call. A lot. They're going to want to make amends. I know. Are you going to let them? I thought about it as we drove through streets lined with autumn leaves, past houses glowing with warm light and family gatherings. Maybe. If they really try. If they actually see me this time instead of just feeling guilty about not seeing me before. That's fair. Grandpa smiled. And if they don't? Then I'll keep building the life I've already built. With people who actually show up for it. 3 months later, my parents still called regularly. The conversations were awkward, stilted, filled with their questions about my life and my careful, measured answers. They'd driven by my house twice but hadn't worked up the courage to knock. My mother sent a birthday card in January, 3 months late but with a long handwritten note inside. Derek invited me to coffee. Just the two of us. We talked for 3 hours, and for the first time in years he asked about my life without comparing it to his own. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. It was them finally seeing the space I'd occupied all along. My Friendsgiving dinner had become a tradition. 15 people crowded into my dining room, laughing and sharing food and actually knowing each other. Grandpa held court at the head of the table, telling embarrassing stories about my childhood to my chosen family. As I looked around at the life I'd built, the home I owned, the career I'd fought for, the relationships I'd cultivated, I realized something important. I didn't need my parents' validation anymore. I didn't need Derek's acknowledgement. I'd spent 10 years proving myself to people who weren't paying attention. But I'd been paying attention. To my own growth, my own success, my own worth. And that, I realized as Grandpa raised his glass in a toast to Emma's incredible decade, was more than enough. The house on Riverside Drive wasn't just an investment. It was proof. Proof that I could build something beautiful without permission, without recognition, without anyone noticing at all. Ownership has a name. Mine. And finally, I understood what that truly meant.